Hello everyone. Welcome to week 7 of our study on 1 Corinthians, A Higher Call. I am so glad you have stuck with us the entire time. We're here in our final week and I am the lucky one who gets to be with you. So a couple things before we get started, a couple things for housekeeping. The first thing I want to let you know about is we have a celebration dinner coming up and we cannot wait to get together with you. We are meeting all together, all of the groups, all of the individuals who have done this study, and we want to just hug your necks. We want to share stories about what God has done in your life over the past 7 weeks, about what you have learned through this study, and we just can't wait to hear from you and listen to you share your hearts and share your stories, and just everyone get together and rally around each other. So the date of that celebration dinner is November 17th. It's a Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m. If you did not receive an email Evite invitation, then please email us at info@echowaco.com and we will be happy to send you an invitation. If you have any questions about it, you can also email us at info@echowaco.com. The second thing I want to tell you about is our study for next semester. We will be piggybacking on our 1 Corinthians study, and we will be delving into 2 Corinthians. All right, so we are very excited to do that. Our study will begin next semester on February 9th. And we will have more details following when we're going to pass out books and have the curriculum ready. And it will be this same format, the online Bible study, so you can begin kind of thinking who you want to invite, who you want to be in a group with, if you want to do it by yourself. We want to give you a lot of freedom once again to make it accessible to your schedule and to your lifestyle, your season of life. So again, if you have any questions, please contact one of the leaders, myself, Vanessa Leroux, Meredith Myers, Laura Schmeltikoff. You can talk to Allison Frenzel. We are so happy to answer any questions for you, or you can email us info@echowaco.com. All right, I think that is it. So today is week 7 of A Higher Call, and we are studying a call to love. That is what we are going to look into. I think it is a wonderful way to wrap up our study this semester. What better way to talk about what Paul is teaching the Corinthians than how to love one another, believers, unbelievers, everyone that God has put in our lives. And so we're going to get started. I believe we are in 1 Corinthians 13. For your homework, you read some of chapter 13 and some of chapter 15. But today we will specifically look in chapter 13. And the verses we are reading are verses 4 through 13. And I'm reading out of the NLT version, New Living Translation. Again, you're welcome to read out of whichever translation you want, but I will be reading out of the NLT. And just like last week, I'm going to read the entire passage and then we'll kind of break it down. So to get started, I think it is a bit ironic that I'm teaching on a call to love. I'm not the most lovey-dovey, endearing person, I know. For those of you who know me, I know that is super shocking. If you do like Myers-Briggs, I am the ESTJ. If you've done the Smalley personality study, I'm the lion. I'm just more of the thinker, very rational, very pragmatic. I don't really wear my heart on my sleeve. So love and emotions, all of that is very difficult for me. I'm just more realistic. My husband says a little pessimistic. I say realistic. I'm more rational, and I like a plan, and I like organization. And so, all the feeling stuff I kind of leave to my husband. He's the more nurturer and the comforter in the family. And so once I will tell this quick story. We were engaged, and we were at my house with my mom, and we were playing a game called Scattergories. I don't know if y'all have ever played that, but you roll the dice and it lands on a letter, and then you have different categories, and you have to come up with a word that begins with that letter. So if it says like a movie, a song, a food, you come up with a word that starts with the letter M, if that's the letter you rolled. So the letter we rolled was H, and we had to come up with a bunch of H words for these different categories. And one of the categories was a term of endearment. Well, I had no idea what a term of endearment was. And so I wrote down, "Hey, you," with a big exclamation point. And so then when you're done with all your categories, there's probably like, 15, 20 categories. You go around and you read all your answers and see who has the best answers. And so it got to me. And so for term of endearment, I yelled out, "Hey, you." And I don't know, I just thought term of endearment, I thought it was something you yelled at someone. In like an angry way. Of course, that would suit my personality a little more. And Brandon just kind of looked at me like a little shocked, like, "How do you not know what this is?" And I was equally shocked that it wasn't "Hey, you." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "It's like a pet name, like, something you would call someone like," and I said, "Well, what was your answer?" And he said, "Honey." And I just looked at him like, I have never even heard of that. And he looks at my mom and he said, "I hold you responsible for this." And so we just had a good laugh, and now I know what a term of endearment is, and we use them often. And but it is our big joke that here we were newly engaged, and he was like, "I don't even know if I know you. You don't even know what a term of endearment is." But I'm learning. I'm still a work in progress when it comes to the area of love. But we are all a work in progress, right? So we are going to dive into 1 Corinthians, and I'm going to do my best to lead us through the love chapter here. Okay, 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4. "Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, nor loses faith. It is always hopeful and endures through every circumstance. Prophecy and speaking in unknown languages and special knowledge will become useless, but love will last forever. Now our knowledge is partial and incomplete, and even the gift of prophecy reveals only part of the whole picture. But when the time of perfection comes, these partial things will become useless. When I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child. But when I grew up, I put childish things away. Now we see things imperfectly, like puzzling reflections in a mirror. But then we will see everything with perfect clarity, and that all that I know now is partial and incomplete. But then I will know everything completely, just as God now knows me completely. 3 things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. So I will say this chapter, verses from these chapters, are probably the most read verses at weddings. That is not a scientific fact, but that is my professional opinion. Brandon, my husband, and I, we do a lot of work with engaged couples and young marrieds, so we go to a lot of weddings. And I've heard this verse, 1 Corinthians 13:13, read at a lot of weddings. And so that's just my professional opinion. Everybody loves this idea of love, and the greatest of these is love. And so I think probably many of you have had it read at your wedding if you're married. And it's a great verse, and we all like this idea of love and being in love. But we're going to dive into these verses a little bit more to find out what exactly Paul was talking about and why he was saying these words to the Corinthians, because it applies to us as well. So throughout this chapter, he's using a technique called anaphora, which is just a fancy word for repetition, okay? And he's using this technique because he's almost talking to the Corinthians like they were children, okay? Just like how many times in a day or a week do we tell our children, say please, say thank you? Over and over. I have a 10-year-old and I'm still reminding him, say please, say thank you, use your manners, use respect. And so we constantly have to use repetition with our children. And the same was true with Paul. He was just using this technique, anaphora, or repetition with them because they weren't loving one another. They were concerned with other things. So he's just being repetitive. So in verses 4 through 5, he starts by saying, love is patient. I am not a very patient person. I know that is shocking to some of you. I think of myself a little bit like Burger King. I want it fast and I want it my way. And it often comes across in texts and emails. I'm just very efficient and quick and to the point, but it can come across a little brash. And I don't mean it that way. I like things done very quickly, and I don't like to waste time. And so, but I'm trying to realize more and more in my old age that loving people well is more important than being efficient. And I think that's what Paul is trying to get across too, that, being patient is a part of loving people well. We don't always have to do things the fastest way. Sometimes it's more important to do things the patient way. I also think, we talk about this a lot in marriage, and when we teach our engaged couples and our young married couples, we talk a lot about, being patient in marriage and being patient with one another. But as I was preparing for this lesson, I thought, this is a great verse for single women. Being patient for God to bring you someone, or being patient with what God has for you. Maybe marriage is not in God's plan for you. And so being patient while God unfolds his plan for you and what he does have for you. So patience is a virtue for all of us to embrace. Okay, then Paul lists off qualities that he was seeing in the Corinthians, and he's listing off these qualities like a parent would talk to a child. So he's basically saying, I don't see love in you. This is what I do see in you. I see jealousy. I see you being boastful. I see you being proud, and I see you being rude. I see you demanding your own way, and I see you being irritable, and I see you keeping a record of wrongs. All right. So if you are a child and your parents telling you all this, you're probably thinking, "Ooh, that doesn't sound good." So jealousy. It is so easy. We talk about this a lot. It's coming up more and more in conversation, but it is so easy to feel jealous of one another. Thank you, social media. I know we all want to be happy for our friends, and I think that is kind of the tightrope we walk. I watch, my friends with their great accomplishments, and I truly am happy for them. But at the same time, there is that little twinge of jealousy or envy. And it is hard, and because it's in our face 24/7 with social media. And, you think back to when we were teenagers and, or even in college, we didn't have to deal with that of watching someone else and their success is always in our face. You might hear about it, and you didn't have to visually see it, and it wasn't a constant bombardment. So jealousy is really something we are going to have to pray against more and more as social media just continues to overtake our lives. Proud, again, it's very easy to struggle with pride in our day and age with social media. Becoming irritable. If you're in the stage of life that I am in with kids and all the responsibilities we have as wives and mothers, or, even if you're a college student, just the amount of responsibilities we all have, it's very easy to be cranky and irritable and take it out on the ones we love the most. And because we know they'll always come back to us. They'll always forgive us. And, I just read something on Instagram. A mom posted, and she took a picture of her little girl, and she wrote, this little girl bears the brunt of all my crabitude. And I thought that was such a funny way to put it, her crabitude. But she said she truly forgives 7 times 70. And, and they do. Our children give us so much grace. Our husbands are so quick to forgive. And, we need to be mindful of that and not be cranky and irritable just because we can. Just because we know our home is our safe place and this is the place we can fly off the handle and be as cranky as we want, because all will be forgiven. This is the place we should have the most patience and the most grace with everyone. There's a verse that I always read to our engaged couples and young marrieds, and it says, "Better to live on a corner of the roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife." And that's Proverbs 21:9. And then it's repeated in Proverbs 25:24. Same verse in 2 different places. So it's kind of like, pay attention, because I'm going to repeat this twice. Better to live on the corner of the roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife. And so it just goes to show, if Solomon is saying, look, it's better for a husband to go up on the roof and huddle up, pull his knees into his chest, wrap his arms around his knees, and just live in a tiny corner all by himself, even when it's raining, even when it's snowing, even when it's hailing, even when it's blazing hot. Just sit in your little tiny corner, not talking to anyone, not eating, not engaging in community. Just sit in your tiny little corner of the house next to the gross, dirty rain gutters. Just sit up there by yourself. Then live in your house with your cranky, irritable wife who's picking fights. It's better for you to be up on the corner of that house than in your house with your cranky, irritable wife who's picking fights. Just picture that. I don't want to be that wife. I don't want to make my husband wish he was up there on the corner of the roof than inside with me. And the next one is keeps no record of wrongs. And this is something we always tell our kids is we don't keep score. We don't keep score. We tell them constantly, anytime, well, she had a sleepover. She's had 2 sleepovers. I haven't had any. Or, how come she's already had dessert and I haven't gotten had? We don't keep score. We do not keep score. I have 4 kids now. If I try to keep score and keep everything 100% even, I would have lost my mind more than I already have. We do not keep score. And the same goes in marriage, at work, with friendships. There's no way we can keep score. Nothing will be 100% even. Nothing in life will be fair. And the sooner we can let go of this fair mentality, the happier we will be. If we can keep no record of wrongs done to us, we need to forgive and move on and not keep score. So there was a quote that I found. It said, one of the great arts in life is to learn what to forget. How powerful is that? One of the great arts in life is to learn what to forget. How free would we be if we could learn what we should forget? Just let it go. Because half of the stuff we hold on to is just minor, petty stuff. Now, I know there are huge wounds that we do carry that we won't ever be able to forget, that we can heal and we can learn from and we can move on. But we can't ever truly forget. But there are some things that are very petty that we just hold on to for the sake of revenge or pettiness, spite. And that's the art of letting go. So in verse 6, Paul moves beyond the characteristics that he sees in the Corinthians, and he continues to describe what love is not. Okay, he says, love, it does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. So every generation has its strengths and its weaknesses, all right? We see it over and over again. So the millennials, your greatest strength is that you have a passion for social justice. You are fighting for those who have no voice. You're giving them a voice. You are giving strength to the weak. And we love that about the millennials. You have energy and you have a fire in your belly and you are out to change the world. And that is what we love about the millennials. Your passion for social justice. For those of you who are here in Waco, about Jesus Said Love. And, they just have such a passion for the injustice against human trafficking and mainly domestic human trafficking. Although, I think they are also taking steps against international human trafficking. But, they just have some really convicting and unbelievable statistics on their website. I'm just going to read a few. So they say the number of U.S. citizens trafficked within our own borders, they estimate more than 200,000 American children are at high risk for trafficking in the sex industry each year. 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 10 boys in the U.S. are sexually exploited before they reach adulthood. It's 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 10 boys. That's huge numbers. Child trafficking, child pornography, and international sex tourism now generates billions of dollars a year worldwide. Billions. I don't know many industries that generate billions. I don't know travel, sports, entertainment industry, billions. The USA is the #1 worldwide producer of pornography. Go USA. The USA is home to the most porn sites. There are over 244 million porn sites in the US. So what is JSL doing about all of this? They have many more statistics, but what is JSL doing? Their theme is, or their mission is go, love, connect. So there's that theme of love. Go, love, connect. They go into the clubs and they love the women unconditionally, no strings attached. And they connect with them. They build relationships with them so they can continue loving them. They also go onto college campuses, they go to churches, they go to businesses, all to spread their mission and spread the word so they can bring other people into their organization who can then go, love, and connect. It's a discipleship model. They really are doing such an awesome job at really bringing a halt to this injustice and rejoicing when the truth wins out, just like this verse says, when truth is brought to light. And I really feel like we can't rejoice when truth wins out if we're not a part of that in some way, whether we are praying for truth to win out, whether we are going ourselves, loving, connecting, giving, somehow engaging in the process. So verse 7, Paul moves on. He says, love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. So I'm going to tell another story. I know a family here in town. They adopted a little boy when he was 3 days old. And he's from Texas, from Dallas. And he has had severe behavior issues. And I don't know when they started, but they have had a just extremely, extremely rough road, and have seen many doctors and psychologists and have had to hospitalize him. And every time they have one of these episodes and they have to hospitalize him or check him into an inpatient program, they never give up. They never give up on him. They never give up on God. They always publicly acknowledge their love for their son, their love for God, and their faith. And they always publicly acknowledge the fact that they still have hope. They still have hope that God will heal their son of whatever ailment he has, mentally or behaviorally. They acknowledge that there's hope for the future, and they continue to endure. And they are living out 1 Corinthians 13:7 more than any family I have ever seen. There's so much risk when you take in a foster child or an adopted child. And, I know people warned us about that. But this family, they have walked this road with so much grace and so much faith and so much hope, and they have remained so faithful. And so when I read verse 7, I think of this family, and I feel like our society has just treated people as if they're disposable. And this family has never given up on their child. And when I say, we treat people like they're disposable, I look at statistics, and so I feel like it's not just my opinion, but I look at statistics, and what I found was in 2014, over 570,000 people were reported homeless. And these are people, they have families. Surely 570,000 people aren't without any family or friends. At one point in their lives, they had a family and they had friends. And over 7 million orphans throughout the world are in institutional care. They're in some sort of facility, group home, hospital, something like that. Asia is home to the large number of orphan children, the largest number of orphan children in the world. There are 60 million orphans in Asia. 60 million. 15 million children are being raised without a father. So, I don't exactly know how many fathers, because they could have multiple kids, but 15 million children, their fathers felt like they were disposable, and they left. 63% of child suicides occur from homes that don't have a father. And 90% of children who choose to run away or become homeless come from homes that don't have a father. These are groups of people that felt disposable. Or our world feels like they are disposable. And verse 7 is saying, love never gives up. It never loses faith. It's always hopeful, and it endures through every circumstances. Why? Because our people are not disposable. God's people are not disposable. We do not discard them when life gets hard, when life gets messy, when people don't live up to our expectations, when people disappoint us, when life doesn't go as planned. We don't give up. We don't stop loving them. We don't walk away from them. Do you know what we do? We love them even more. We stick with them. That is what God has called us to do. So in verses 8 through 13, Paul stresses that the spiritual gifts they were so hyper-focused on, he says those are only for the present. Those are temporary. Those are for the here and now. Love, on the other hand, is eternal. So that's why he's trying to change their mindset. Stop wasting your time on what you are so fixated on, because that's just temporary. It's going to go away. You need to focus on love, because that is what lasts forever. So in verses 8 through 10, that's where he's talking about the prophetic gifts, the unknown languages or speaking in tongues, wisdom and knowledge. So verses 8 through 10, it says, prophecy and speaking in unknown languages and special knowledge will become useless, but love will last forever. Now our knowledge is partial and incomplete, and even the gift of prophecy reveals only part of the whole picture. But when the time of perfection comes, these partial things will become useless. So verse 8, the part where he says love never fails, or love will last forever. Paul's, he's emphasizing the fact that he says love will never fail, or I think I read a commentary, it said love will never fall away. He's saying, love is eternal. It will last longer than all of these things. And, this commentator said, how can we be so sure Paul is right? I thought that was a funny way of putting it. How can we be so sure Paul is right? And we can be so sure because prophecies, there will come a day we won't need prophecies, right? Those are messages between God and an earthly person or a prophet, a messenger. And when we get to heaven, and we're living in eternity, we won't need God to talk to us through a messenger, right? God will talk to us. And so we won't need prophecies or prophets. We'll be talking directly to God. So prophecies and prophets, they're temporary. They're earthly, temporal things. Same goes for speaking in tongues. That is a language, right, that God uses for us here on earth. When we get to eternity, we won't need tongues. We won't need special languages. We will understand everything God is saying. So speaking in tongues and prophecies, those are just temporary earthly gifts. And we won't need those when we get to heaven. So that's why Paul is saying love is eternal. Those gifts that you are so fixated on, so hyper-focused on, you think that is the end-all be-all. It's not. Those are temporary. Let's focus on something bigger and better. Verse 9, where he says prophecy is imperfect, he's saying it's imperfect because it's still passing through a person. Even though it comes from God, it's still passing through an imperfect human being. So the message you're getting, it might be slightly flawed because it's coming through a human being who is flawed. And then verse 10, he says the time of perfection. This means, the time when we stand before God in his presence. That will be the time of perfection. Okay, verse 11. All right, here Paul uses a metaphor and he's comparing the Corinthians to children. Again, he was kind of already doing that in a way, but here he's doing it even more so. And he's saying, right now, this is your childhood because you're behaving like children. He says, when I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child. But when I grew up, I put childish things away. And he's saying to the Corinthians, you're still playing with your childish toys. But look at me. I've already put those childish toys away. I don't need those anymore. But you're still hanging on to your childish toys. So if you were to come to my my minivan right now, and yes, I rock a minivan. Yes, I do. If you were to come to it and you were to open the sliding door, yes, it slides all by itself. It's that awesome. Out would spill, I don't even know how many water bottles and sippy cups and, books with torn pages and McDonald's toys and probably a single flip-flop because who knows where the other one is. All these little treasures would fall out because my kids can't go 2 minutes down the road to church without having all of their precious belongings because they're kids, right? They're childish. They have to have all of their things with them at all times. And that's how kids are. They want all of their little treasures all the time. They haven't put their childish things away. Now, I will say my 10-year-old, he has been much better than my 8 and 6-year-old and the baby. I mean, we have to practically carry an overnight bag with her wherever we go. But, the 10-year-old, he's a little better. I mean, he requires his book. I mean, if we go anywhere, Carter, do you have your book? Okay, go get your book. Now, the other two, we pretty much take activity bags wherever we go because they have to be entertained 24/7. But Carter just needs one thing, his book. He's starting to get to that age where he's putting those childish things away. And that's what Paul was saying to the Corinthians. You're not putting your childish things away. You're still carrying, your activity bag or, you're having all your McDonald's toys and your sippy cups and your water bottles and your flip-flops spilling out of the car. And, he's saying it's time to give up those things, grow up. Okay, all those things aren't necessary anymore. A sign of spiritual maturity is to not be concerned with temporary things here on earth, to be concerned with the eternal things. And that's what Paul wanted them to be more concerned with, was the eternal things, which is love. All right, verse 12 says, now we see things imperfectly, like puzzling reflections in a mirror, but then we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know now is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely, just as God knows me completely. Okay, so what he's saying here is back in this time, mirrors were very rare, and people saw the reflections either in water or mirrors made out of metal, and so it was really hard to get a really clear image of themselves. And so that's why he's saying a puzzling reflection in the mirror. So they would look, but it was a little puzzling or difficult to get a crystal clear reflection of themselves. And so, I know when I'm, I do all my makeup in my bathroom, but I don't really put my lipstick on until I'm about to leave the house. And so when I'm about to leave, it's honestly just too exhausting to take the extra 10 steps to go to the bathroom and put my lipstick on and look in the mirror, and I'm always in too much of a hurry because, like I said, I like efficiency. So I will usually go up to the toaster in my kitchen, and it's like a stainless steel toaster, but I've had it for, I don't know, probably 14 years, and so it's a little stained, and so it's not the greatest reflection, but I'll go up to the toaster and I'll do my lip liner and do my lipstick, and then I'll get in the car and I'll check, and it will be totally a mess and terrible until I have to fix it. And it's because the reflection is, it's not crystal clear. It's just like Paul is saying, it's a puzzling reflection. It's a sort of a smudged reflection. And, he's saying here on earth, we see, a partial reflection. And that's what I see when I look at my toaster. I see a partial reflection. But he's saying, when we get to heaven, we'll see completely. And now we see a poor reflection, but there we'll see a crystal clear reflection. We'll see everything, all of these mysteries will be uncovered. Another analogy is, today on earth, we see a photograph. When we get to heaven, it'll be like stepping into that photograph and experiencing everything that's going on in the photograph. Or if you think of like Mary Poppins, the movie, when they look at the sidewalk chalk drawing, that's what we are dealing with here on earth. But when we get to heaven, it will be like jumping into that sidewalk chalk drawing, like Mary Poppins and the kids do, and they experience everything going on in the sidewalk chalk drawing. So that's what Paul is telling them. Here we don't see everything perfectly, but when we get to heaven, it will be perfect. I love the second part of verse 12 when he says, then I will know everything completely, just as God knows me completely. And I feel like as women, isn't that one of the greatest things we long for, to be known perfectly? I feel like sometimes with our husbands, we get so frustrated because they don't fully understand us. They don't get all of our needs. And sometimes we get really hurt because they're not fulfilling our needs or meeting our needs. And sometimes with friends, we have little rifts or frustrations because our friends don't fully understand us and they don't know us completely. And just as human beings, we have a great need and desire to be fully known and fully understood. And it causes some division when people don't fully know us. It is just a great human desire and human need to be known, to be understood, to be loved. And that's what Paul is saying is, you're not fully known here. And that is just a hole in an emptiness that will never be filled. And so stop looking to all of these gifts and all of these earthly things to fill that emptiness. It will never be filled here on earth. When you get to heaven, God will fill that emptiness and that hole. He knows you. He understands you. He sees you for who you are because he created you. And when you get to heaven, you will see yourself fully, just as he sees you fully and completely. And he knows you. And you will see it too. And I think this is one of the things that makes love so difficult is, God calls us to love others even though we don't see them fully, even though we don't completely understand them. So, in those moments when the person is really difficult to love, God still calls us to love them. Even when we don't understand them or understand their motivations or their behavior, God is still calling us to love them. Even when love feels too painful and too costly and too risky, God is still calling us to love them. And in fact, those are usually the times when God is calling us to love them all the more. I use this quote in my introduction to week 7. It's a quote from Mother Teresa, and it says, "I have found the paradox that if you love until it hurts, there can be no more hurt, only more love." And I think that is a beautiful quote. And I think if we are struggling to love, as I really do, I don't struggle to love, I struggle to show my love, and I struggle to let people love me. And this quote has been really good for me. Just a good reminder that it's okay to hurt when we love. It's okay to be scared when we love. That sometimes there is pain in love. Sometimes there is sadness in love. Sometimes there is rejection in love. And that's okay. Keep loving. Keep pressing forward in your love. Because that's what God calls us to do. Because at the end of the day, when all of this is gone, love is what will be left. And God will say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Because the one thing I called you to do was to love me and to love others. That's what matters. And verse 13, it closes with 3 things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. So I'm going to close this in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for the gift of love. I thank you that you love us when we are at our worst, and you love us when we are at our best. And Lord, I thank you that you give us the strength to love when it is difficult and messy And when we, Lord, when we just don't even feel like loving, that you help us just put one foot in front of the other and love anyway. And I pray that you would help us do that, Lord, even more. I pray that you would help us remember Paul's words that we have learned and talked about today, that we would remember that love is greater than any other talents or gifts you give us. It's greater than any other pursuit. And all these things we pray in your name. Amen.